right, my friends, thank you for being here. Appreciate everybody's time tonight. We have a lot to talk about, so I want to welcome everyone to the channel. Give me 1 second. I just hit the buttons to make everything go. I want to say hello to everyone on the X platform. Thank you for being here. And, of course, all of my family and friends on YouTube, thank you for being here. All right, here we go. If you haven't done so already, take a moment, introduce yourself, and say hello. American Nana, thank you for being here already. Good to see you here as always. And, of course, my friend Julianne, appreciate you being here too. So don't be ashamed or afraid. Come on in, say hello. Don't be shy is probably the best way to say it. Thanks for everybody being here. We are going to talk tonight. I got about three main things. We're going to talk about Judge Merchan and this, I don't even know if you could really call it a decision, but it's kind of a decision on a particular motion brought by President-elect Donald Trump. We're going to talk in depth about that. We're also going to talk, we got some basic news pertaining to the case we're following out of right here in my home state of Florida, this Breonna Boston. Interesting things developing on that. And then finally, fantastic news as far as I'm concerned, and that is that Liz Cheney has been referred for criminal prosecution due to her role in the January 6th so-called select committee and some of the malfeasance she is accused of in this particular case. So I thought this would be kind of shocking for everybody to hear, because I was a little bit surprised, even though I knew something had to be coming one way or the other. And Julianne, what pardon do you see coming for who? I know there's going to be a lot of pardons coming down on both sides of the equation here. And of course, yeah, that's right. You live in San Diego. Thank you for refreshing my memory. I knew we have family members all over this great country, if not the world. So if you're new to the channel, you are at the home of the free-minded Patriots. That's what we're all about. I am J.R. Dukes, your host. You can always find me on the X platform at Reach J.R. Dukes. All the other platforms, it's simply at J.R. Dukes. I am here to help you live your best life possible simply by understanding the world that we live in better. Together, I want us to keep an eye on the people that are in elected positions, the people that effectively are over us as far as the law is concerned. It's very important to understand politics, current events, the law, police, how to deal with police. And I'd like to talk in anything and everything and educate each and every one of you on subjects, especially about the law. Very important. The law is effectively the rules that we live under in this life as far as the secular world is concerned. And it's important that we all understand this and understand how we should approach this when dealing with our children. And we have to make sure we educate our children no differently than children of a police officer would teach their children, or a judge or a prosecutor or a DA. This is information that everybody needs to know. So hello, Bleflin. Thank you for being here. If a state can't find a crime, anything federal will be pardoned or NVR happen. No red state can find. Well, we're going to talk about that on Liz. No red state can find a Liz crime. Well, I'm just kind of reading between the lines here. I don't particularly like seeing anybody necessarily in legal jeopardy, but at the same time, I firmly believe that these people have, in all likelihood, engaged in some type, let's just call it malfeasance, criminal conduct. I think it's also important for these, let's just call them woke Democrats, to see the other side of the coin, to see what happens and what it feels like when you are on the receiving end of this outrageous lawfare. You have people like President Joe Biden. If there's one thing that really irritates me about this guy to no end, is the fact that he has made our country, in my opinion, clearly no better than what I would call a banana republic. And I know y'all have heard me talk about this before on this channel, but it's absolutely true. We have set the example. Joe Biden has set the example now to where you don't like the person that is running against you. You don't like the ideas of the other side. Well, it's very simple. Go after them and prosecute them. Go after their children. Go after every single dime they have. And just make life literally miserable for them. Shatter their reputation. pull them in for 3 different arrests, take their mug shots, every type of degradation and humiliation that you possibly can find. And in my opinion, you even had the Biden administration, if they are not guilty of what happened to President Donald Trump as far as the attempted assassinations on his life, in my opinion, they are at least guilty of allowing the circumstances to arise. They did not supply him with enough Secret Service agents. I think that's very clear. The president and his team requested additional help for quite some time, and they simply refused to give it to the man and to make sure that a kid like over there in Butler, Pennsylvania, could get that close to him with a rifle and literally shoot him in the head. Thank God it only injured his ear. If it would have been literally a millimeter over towards his head, he would have in all likelihood been killed. It's just really scary that the president-elect now almost was not. And as far as I'm concerned, these types of behaviors require an investigation and require criminal prosecution where appropriate. And once we get into this with Liz Cheney, I think you'll understand why there is there. And listen, make no mistake about it, there is clear collaboration between the federal government under the Biden-Harris administration, the folks over in New York under Letitia James, the AG. You have Alvin Bragg, the DA there in New York City. Clearly, all these individuals conspired, along with sweet Fani Willis of Georgia and her lover / paramour, Nathan Wade. All of these people, and we'll throw Jack Smith into the mix, in my humble opinion, have colluded. You want to talk about RICO? That is RICO. That's racketeering, internally corrupt organizations. That's what they did. They all have been having this big powwow together, and they did what they did to try to take down Donald Trump. As Alan Dershowitz would say in his book that he wrote many years ago, they all conspired in an effort to get Trump. That's exactly what his book is titled, and that's exactly what they tried to do, and that's exactly what they failed in doing. And they're now going to have to pay the repercussions for that. I was hoping all along that this lawfare would just frankly end with the Biden-Harris administration losing power. I don't think that is a possibility. When Donald Trump first came to office, we all remember sweet Letitia James talking about how it's not going to stop. She's going to continue to persecute him, and she's not giving up the ghost. She's not going to do what's in the best interest of the country. And the same can definitely be said for Fani Willis. She is refusing, despite a court ordering her to do so, refusing to turn over documents and other evidence that the court said she has to turn over that would show the collaboration between all these organizations that I just pointed out. So make no mistake about it, Leftland, there is some serious, let's just again go back to one of my words here, malfeasance, criminal activity, in my opinion, that's going to come forward, and it's going to show. And American Anna, you're right. Liz, if she's not a mole, she's definitely a person that is some type of conspirator in this. And we're going to get into the allegations in just a second. I promise you, the behavior that they're alleging is clearly criminal. And it includes, just a little spoiler alert, it includes, but not limited to, effectively witness tampering, and not just tampering, trying to get a particular witness to change their story in an effort to stick it to Donald Trump. Just that simple. Yes, it's childish desperation. And again, I really, with every fiber in my body, can honestly tell each and every one of you, I really wish this was not going to go down this way. There's a part of my brain that says, on some weird level, I kind of hope Joe Biden pardons everybody. I don't really want that to happen, but on some level, I think I do, just because it will put a stop to this. When he issues those pardons, it will be a declaration of the criminal lawfare that they engaged in, their criminal activity. And he's going to, these preemptive pardons they're talking about, that's what they're discussing. That's what they're talking about. Then when Donald Trump comes into power, he will have every right, not that he needs a right, but he will definitely have a moral right, in my estimation, to go ahead and pardon each and every January 6th protester, anybody involved with it, directly, indirectly, third party, or otherwise, Donald Trump will definitely have, in my opinion, the moral high ground to do that and to pardon his children, pardon himself for that matter, pardon everybody that might be a target of a future, let's just say, a Biden-Harris wannabe administration. It's going to be the standard from now on. When a president goes out of power, he's going to have to pardon himself and definitely pardon the people in his privity. If you look at the motion or the ruling today by Judge Merchan, it's prima facie evidence of exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't issue these pardons, you're going to have a judge like Judge Merchan come along and find a way to try to insulate a negative decision, aka lawfare, try to insulate it from a higher court overturning it. And it's very unfortunate, but that is the state of the country that we're living in today. American Anna, I don't think you can legally pardon a crime before the crime is known. We've talked about that, American Anna, and I'm not even going to say unfortunately. It's fortunate that our founding fathers, in my opinion, allowed for a president to have a very awesome power like the pardon power, and he does not have to have a crime first. There doesn't have to be a charge first. And we know this from history. If you go back and look at the ruling in the Nixon pardon that was granted by President Ford, President Nixon was never arrested. He was never charged with a crime. President Ford did not even know what potential crimes he faced. He simply gave a, let's just call it a generic pardon. And that's exactly what what President Biden did, really, in relation to his son. He said, hey, any crime from January 1st of this year all the way through this month is hereby forgiven that my son might have committed against the United States, might have committed, did commit, is charged with, is not currently charged with, known or unknown. So it is what it is on there. Rosemary Fier, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you for being here as always. American Nana says, it will never stop at the lawfare until they are made to face their crimes. It's sad for our country, but no one's above the law. Amen to that. I have no real disagreements with that, but this lawfare, unfortunately, is probably not going to stop until they come up with a plan to stop it. I'm not sure exactly what that plan is going to be, but I have said on this program on many occasions that I am very concerned with the fact that the United States is pretty well the only major developed country that has prosecutors, DAs, solicitors that can, on their own initiative, decide, I'm going to mess your life up. I'm going to wreak havoc on you, your family, and your life. They can just decide, today's your day and you're going to be taken out. And then they simply sign a piece of paper and you get the joy of being arrested. If you're lucky, you're arrested. If you're unlucky, then you're on the receiving end of one of those raids, one of those deals where the police can dress up like it's wartime and effectively raid your house at 4 o'clock in the morning while you're sleeping. And God help you if you sleep with a firearm or have a firearm close to your bed like I do, because if you reach for it and grab it, it's not going to be a good morning for you, even as you wake up in the fog of sleep. But I digress. I'm just telling you how it's played in real life. And yes, no one is above the law, but also remember this, no one is below the law. And I've said that many times in relation to President Trump. He shouldn't be treated differently as being above the law, and he should not be treated differently as being below the law. And it was never intended for our laws, for our prosecutors to target a person like, for example, Letitia James did. She was running for office and says, hey, elect me and I'll get this SOB for you. Elect me and I'll make his life miserable. I'll sue him every day. We've talked about this. You can go back and look at the videos. It's not hard to find. They're all over the internet, ladies and gentlemen. It's just really unbelievable, the promises she made everybody that I'm going to go out and destroy this man, destroy his life. Remember that video of Kamala Harris that came out during the campaign back when she was Attorney General of Florida? She was laughing and making fun and saying, I could just wave my pen and mess people's lives up because of truancy. Remember we talked about that one unfortunate single mother that literally lost her home and her ability to take care of her child because Kamala Harris had her arrested for truancy, even though this woman had a daughter that apparently had some type of condition involving where she was routinely ill from time to time. I mean, this is very serious stuff, and you have to be thinking about that. Yeah, and American Anna, I appreciate you telling me that you didn't know this. That's the reason we have this time to meet together, because we all have to talk about this and hear this out. And I was talking with Zach yesterday, if y'all remember, and there's going to be times where we have to, as any family, we're going to have to push back and forth on something. If I'm wrong about something, tell me why I'm wrong. There's a possibility I might change my mind or change my perspective on something. But we all have to see the world that we live in for what it is, see the legal system for what it is, and see the people that are our leaders for what they are. And unfortunately, they're people. And by definition, they are sinful, imperfect people that do and will make mistakes, and we have to hold them accountable accordingly. And it's just really just that simple. So, and let's see, my friend Julianne says, so many things are coming to light. New age upon us, Aquarius. Amen. Enlightenment, high tech. Yeah, that's a very valid point. And remember this too, despite a lot of the negatives that I point out, always remember this. We live in a great, great country. It's not perfect, but it's a great country. And I will tell you straight up that this country that we live in is blessed by God Almighty. I have no doubt in my mind about that. The thing I like to tell people is that even the great pharaohs from 3,000 years ago would happily trade places with someone in our country that we consider poor. And I've told people that before, and they're like, what are you talking about? What are you drinking? What are you smoking? Well, think of it this way. Even a typical poor person in the United States, generally, I mean, I know there's exceptions, but they generally have air conditioning or a window unit. They generally have a refrigerator. They generally have food or access to food. Even a poor person in the United States has health care. If you have a medical crisis, if you're in a pinch, if you have an emergency, the hospital cannot refuse you. They have to give you the care and things that you need. When you lived 3,000 years ago, you normally didn't live that long. Normally most of your children died before the age of 5 years old. Disease was rampant. They didn't have, I mean, I can go on and on and on, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm really telling you, whether you know it or not, you are living right now, probably in the best times that humanity has ever had. And we're all very fortunate. Just sometimes we don't realize it because we're used to it. Have you ever noticed you don't appreciate certain things until you don't have them? I remember, I think it was like 35 years of age, I had a little asthma going on. I never had that experience in my life. And it's one of them things. You never appreciate breathing until you cannot breathe. And so many things are like that in our lives as human beings. We simply don't appreciate something until we no longer have it. How many times in our lives do we allow ourselves to get depressed or get upset because somebody won't have relations with us or a relationship with us? They won't be part of our lives. And yet the people that are part of our lives, we generally treat them, let's just say we don't treat them as good as we should. We're always worried about something we don't have or don't control. And what we should be doing is rejoicing in the blessings that we have today, enjoying the people that want to be part of our lives, enjoying the family and friends that show us love each and every day by simply being in our privity. That's just my 2 cents. So don't be under any disillusion as we go through these things. Sure, there's a lot of things that are wrong. There's a lot of things that are right. And somehow, some way, just having these discussions that we have will serve to make everything better one way or the other. I don't know for a fact that it's going to change our society completely, but I also have no doubt whatsoever that it is going to benefit someone's life that listens to our conversations or interacts with us in these conversations, because we always pick up one thing that helps us improve our lives or improve our situation, or at least it makes us think before we make a decision, and it prevents us from making a bad decision that could be something that cost us very dearly. I hope that makes sense. And If it doesn't, just ignore it. But I think if you rewind it and listen to it, you'll see the value in what I just had to say. Julianne says the prophets of the Bible wanted to be alive at this time. I'm sure they did. I have no doubt about that. Look at the Black Death. Yeah, that's a good point too. The Black Death in Europe, I think 33 to 35% of the country died, all the countries in that area died. So if you know 3 people, one of them died statistically back during the time of the Black Death. That's an excellent point. When you look at medicines, even like antibiotics, I don't believe they came around to the 1930s, 1940s. We didn't even know what bacteria and viruses were until relatively soon in our history. I mean, life has really changed. The average life expectancy in the year 1900, this is going to come as a shock to you, but here we go. The average, this is just the average. That doesn't mean everybody made it to this age, but the average life expectancy in the year 1900 was the ripe old age of 45 years of age. That was the average. And then, of course, today, the average in the United States is much longer than that. So is things perfect? Absolutely not. But we do have a lot of blessings, and we all need to make sure that we sometimes take a break and think about these blessings that we have. My friend Sapphire says, yes, in the early 1900s, average life was around 50. I've always went with 45 years of age, but there are different statistics out there. And let's see, Julianne, I feel like I was put here to take care of my family. Absolutely. It's so important, and it's such a blessing to realize, number one, that you're blessed, and then number two, see the wisdom and the way God set everything up. And a quick example is even work. Going to work is a blessing. It means you can see, hear, walk. You can drive to work, take a bus to work. Your body functions. I mean, I don't want to get too corny or too goofy about this, but work is a blessing, whether you realize it or not. It's all about perspective. And see, in my life, I choose to take the perspective and looking at things in the light that I have abundance, in the light that I am blessed, in the light that says I have gratitude and I'm happy for everything. And I'll end this conversation on this. In my life, everything is my fault. If something is wrong, the buck stops with me. The problem is me. It's my fault. It's really just that simple. And that's very empowering. At least it is for me. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in looking at life like that. If I don't like something, then it's up to me to change it. If I'm in a pit and I am not happy, it's my job to change it. There is no superhero coming through the door that's going to save you or save me. It just doesn't happen. This is not a movie. You have to be your own superhero in your life. And things change when you decide to change. Just that simple. So just kind of ponder all that, and hopefully maybe that helps someone out. If anybody wants to talk about something like that, you can put it in the comments below, or just my contact information scrolls at the bottom of the screen. Send me a text. I'd be happy to chat with anybody that would like to have an expanded conversation on any of these particular topics here. In the tree of life, be the high reaching fruit. Absolutely. On the internet too, that's another thing. You take your phone, our phones that we have, these beautiful, wonderful phones that we have right here. Everything that man has ever thought of, created, written down, all this wisdom of all these years, it's in the palm of our hand. All we got to do is access it. And YouTube, what a blessing this is. You don't like reading? Don't worry about it. You can tune in and listen to some guy like me sit around and just start blobbing all day and maybe pick up something that benefits your life. There's a ton of places to turn to listen to educate yourself. There really is no excuse in today's time to not be to not focus and do what it is that you're doing. One of the things that I love to listen to is stoicism. And I'm not talking Mr. Spock, for example, where I'm walking around not feeling emotion, telling everybody to live long and prosper. But when you look at the Stoic thoughts from a long time ago, And it's popular today. It was real popular back then. The reason that it fell out of popularity was because of Christianity. Kind of became the new way of thinking, and it was kind of the center of people's lives back in that time frame. And of course, I'm happy about the Christianity. Don't get me wrong, but if you go back and you look at Stoicism, some of the thoughts, some of the advice that they have in there, it's really, really liberating. It's very freeing, and it's very similar to the Bible, to be honest with you, as far as some of the teachings. And if it's not teachings, it's just the perspective of looking at things. Is for example, I just said about looking at your blessings. Stoicism says that too. Be appreciative, have gratitude. Well, you find that in the Bible too, right? There's a Bible passage that says, count your blessings, count them one by one. And it's the same advice. It's just repackaged a little differently right there. So, okay, let's go ahead and, cause I don't want to run out of time. I want to make sure I hit some of these points today. So let's go ahead and let's get into the first video, and then I'll go back to the comments and we will talk about it there. So let's get right into the news of sweet Liz Cheney. We all remember Liz Cheney. She was the former representative from the great state of Wyoming. She was the only representative from the state of Wyoming because even though it's an entire state, it's got a very low population. And remember, she was one of these, I don't know if she was necessarily a never Trumper, but she definitely was not on the Trump train. She despised Donald Trump. She did everything and anything she possibly could to undermine Donald Trump. She, in my opinion, developed a severe case of I don't know. She was narcissistic. She started, instead of realizing and appreciating the fact that her boss is the people that put her in office from the state of Wyoming, she started having hubris. She started thinking that she is all that and she can make up her own mind and disregard what her own voters wanted her to do back home in Wyoming. So she did everything she could to undermine Donald Trump and his agenda. At one time, she was number 3 as far as the power structure goes in the Republican Party in Washington at one particular time. So she constantly opposed Donald Trump. What did Donald Trump and team do? They put up another candidate in a primary. They primaried her. She lost decisively, and then the person that won the primary went on to replace Liz Cheney. And of course, Liz Cheney's response, instead of learning from this experience, reflecting on this experience, doing what I just said about everything is my fault type of thing. Nope, that's not Liz Cheney. No way, no how. So what did she end up doing? She said she was going to devote herself to doing whatever she had to do to continue to make sure Donald Trump never got close to the White House ever again. She's one of those. We all remember her campaigning on behalf of Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris would be sitting around having these ridiculous chats with her, talking about how everybody hates Donald Trump and how the generals think Donald Trump is crazy. And because all of these people have these thoughts, we should have the same thoughts. And of course, it failed in spectacular fashion. Well, she also served on this so-called Blue Ribbon Committee. I would call it the non-select committee on this so-called January 6th insurrection. And as of today, they decided, it says Cheney referred for prosecution, witness tampering, just like we always knew she'd be prosecuted for. It said that this committee was presented with evidence of testimony where we all may or may not remember Cassidy Hutchinson. And she lied in her statements. They are facing up to 20 years in prison. But the allegations go deeper, and that has to be that this was at the instruction and urging of former Representative Liz Cheney. So let's go and take a peek at this video, and then we will talk about it after we listen to it. It's not that long. It's about 2 or 3 minutes, and then we will talk about it.
Administration Subcommittee on Oversight, the committee that's been investigating January 6th, just released its final report for this year. It accuses Liz Cheney of tampering with the witness, Cassidy Hutchinson, trying to influence her testimony. It formally recommends that the Federal Bureau of Investigation criminally investigate Liz Cheney when President Trump takes over on January 20th. One of several bombshell revelations in here. The report also says that Jack Smith colluded with the January 6th committee, but that some of the evidence has not yet been turned over to Congress. They're demanding that that evidence be turned over, something that might happen when the new administration takes over. But a really significant and rare moment for Congress to actually suggest that one of its members should be criminally prosecuted for tampering with a witness in an official government proceeding, a House hearing, the January 6th House hearing. As you remember, Cassidy Hutchinson was the bombshell witness for the Democrats, claimed that Donald Trump tried to commandeer the presidential limousine, take it to the Capitol. We now know that wasn't true. The Secret Service had already told Liz Cheney it wasn't true. She presented the evidence anyways to the American public, tried to give it credence. There's some other testimony where Cassidy Hutchinson talks about a document she claims she wrote it. She didn't. Someone else wrote it. All of that is laid out in this report. But the headline is Liz Cheney could be facing an FBI criminal investigation based on this information that Congress has transmitted this morning.
John, a quick follow-up real quick. I'm looking at witness tampering, obviously a federal crime, up to potentially 20 years in prison if this is witness tampering.
A very serious allegation. And as we now know from the reporting we did a few months ago, Liz Cheney was communicating to Cassidy Hutchinson around her lawyer. She was represented by a lawyer. When you go out and reach out to someone,
I want to make sure everybody understands that Liz Cheney at this time was an attorney. She was a member of the bar, I believe, in Wyoming. She went to law school. She understands these rules. She understands her obligation as to what they call an officer of the court. And one of the most fundamental rules when you're an attorney is that when a client has an attorney, it is highly, highly improper to go around that attorney and to directly talk with a person that's represented. In this case, you had this Cassidy Hutchinson that had an attorney, yet the allegations are true. Liz Cheney approached her and instead of going through her attorney, but that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is allegedly she convinced her to not only change her testimony, but to outright lie. Effectively, it's just a conspiracy, if you will, on the part of Liz Cheney. So I just want to give it a little bit of context.
Around their lawyer, you're violating the D.C. bar ethics, which, by the way, Liz Cheney was a barred lawyer in D.C., so she was obligated to follow those rules. But it goes beyond that. It suggests that she was trying to influence the testimony, get her to say things that would make Donald Trump look worse. This is a very serious allegation from Chairman Barry Loudermilk, the head of this committee, the guy who's run the counter January 6th investigation that has found so many things we were denying.
And I have to make sure we understand this. Barry Watermile, or whatever Barry's last name is. Barry is the individual. He's a Democratic representative. He was the head of this so-called January 6th committee. He is also one that Joe Biden's been talking about giving a preemptive pardon to. These people all know that the bad deeds, the malfeasance that they have all committed is about to be exposed. They know they are in a very serious world of hurt.
Denied and not told about in the earlier probe, but a really significant moment today. And you're right, if the FBI were to pursue charges, this would be a very serious crime and one that could carry some serious prison time.
John, apart from Liz Cheney, you mentioned another name that I think is pretty big, Jack Smith. You said that he's named in this report. No referral for Jack Smith, but your expectation is that under Kash Patel, the FBI then would also be investigating him?
There is some evidence that Congress is trying to get its hands on that suggests that Jack Smith was colluding and working with the Democrats to take down Donald Trump. They don't have the evidence. They know what it is. They're seeking it from the FBI and the Justice Department. The hope is, in this report expressed, that when the new administration comes over, Congress will finally get that evidence and we'll know exactly what it was that Jack Smith was doing with the Justice Department, with the J6 committee. Remember, we also believe that Jack Smith may have had contacts, as did the Biden White House, with some of these local prosecutors in Georgia and New York. So that is another area of inquiry.
Isn't that amazing that all of these dominoes, if you will, are now falling? And we knew this was going to happen. they're going to just basically follow the paper trail, if you will, follow the electronic record. I know that they're all shredding everything they possibly can right now. They're doing everything they can to get rid of records, to get their story straight. The problem is once the new FBI under Patel starts doing their job, you cannot hide these types of crimes. You cannot hide this type of a conspiracy. There's too many people. You notice they have already been talking now about Jack Smith. They're going to go after him. And the reason they're going to be able to be successful, in my opinion, with this is because there is clear colluding between all of these parties, between New York, between Jack Smith and his cases, between Florida and DC, and of course, Fani Willis, Nathan Wade. All of these people, along with the Biden-Harris administration, colluded for the purpose of getting Donald Trump. And they're going to have to pay for their decisions. And when you see people like this group of reporters taking a very serious interest in deep dive, these people here are good at what they do in investigative reporting. This guy in the lower left-hand side of your screen right here, this is, I believe that's David Brody. He is the senior, I believe he's like a White House correspondent for the 700 Club, a Christian broadcasting channel. And he does a great job, and he's pretty tenacious himself. He gets on something and he does not let it go. So let me take a quick peek at the comments. Let me make sure that I get everybody's comments back in here. Yeah, Sapphire is going to be tomorrow doing a live stream on Justin Trudeau, and he's at Sapphire Ridge News. I know that the guy over, our friends in Canada, Justin Trudeau, is not having a good time. And yeah, she is an over-Trumper. I figured she was, and she lost by 45 points. I knew it was a huge defeat for her, and good. She deserved every single bit of it. And yes, Canada's got resignations going on right now. They're all up in arms about Donald Trump's simple threat of tariffs and other issues. They know they have to get the border in order or else. And that is not just for Mexico. That also goes for our friends up in Canada. All right, let me just make sure there's no comments here. Julianne says, Liz reported repeated so many lies proven untrue. Trump and his lawsuits against the media. Like, yes, he is really terrible. Have you ever noticed, especially recently, the tide has changed? So many great things are going on right now for President Donald Trump elect. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to have this happen in reverse. Just before the election, we all know you had effectively every single media outlet going after Donald Trump and hammering him every single step of the way. And now you have even MSNBC with old crazy Scarborough, and you have Jeff Bezos. Now you have everybody going down to Donald Trump's home over in Mar-a-Lago to basically kiss his ring. We know what I'm talking about there. That's what's going on. Donald Trump is now what is cool. Donald Trump is kind of like Americana now. He's no longer this accidental president from 2016. Donald Trump has been through this before. Obviously, he has a very clear vision of what he wants. He practices the art of the deal. It's not just a book. He practices what he talks about in that book. I don't think we'll have time to get to it today, but you may have seen that particular clip on the news where some banker was saying, I'm going to create 100,000 jobs in America now because Donald Trump is in power, and I'm going to invest in $100 billion. Donald Trump, right in front of everybody, said, that's a great thing. How about making it 200 billion? I mean, the art of the deal in practice. I just absolutely love it. And Alyssa Farrah Griffin, even on The View, have you noticed they started changing their tone? Especially Alyssa, even though she voted for Kamala Harris, I bet she's having one of those gut checks like, oh, I went down that wrong path, huh? Sapphire says there's text message between Liz Cheney, Alyssa. Of course, all these people have colluded together. We know that this is just a big orchestrated effort to get Trump. It's going to probably involve all of these people. When you think about the election and the fact that Donald Trump won the popular vote, now, I think the final number is going to be right about 2.5 million more votes than Kamala Harris. And statistically, that's a lot tighter than I would like it to be. But it's still 2.5 million votes. But when you look at it through the lens of the reality that happened, the legacy media after Trump, you had courts indicting Donald Trump, arresting Donald Trump, convicting Donald Trump, going after his family, kids, everybody on the news. He is a fascist. It's going to be the end of democracy. Women, he's taking away your rights. I mean, it's just a non-stop drumbeat that the end of the world is going to happen if Donald Trump makes it back to the presidency again. And of course, it was all what I call fantastic lies. All right, let me just double check if I have any more questions or comments. Yeah, Mark Milley, that's the general that I was talking about that was kind of singing the same beat that Liz Cheney was singing. Julian says, I would think Elon could sneak in and get the, I'm sure about that. I don't know if y'all heard that about Elon Musk. You know, on election night, of course, these are some reports that I read. I don't know if it really made mainstream news or not. This guy's a smart guy, Elon Musk. He knows what he's doing. I mean, this is a guy that launches rockets up into space and then has the rocket come back down the same way it went up. I mean, that just doesn't even seem real. I mean, this man is really good at what he does. But I heard 2 or 3 different reports talking about Elon Musk knew way before us on election night that Donald Trump won. Something about he had some type of app that he had people make for him that was able to crunch numbers or whatever the app did. He knew who the next president of the United States was going to be before you and I knew who the president was going to be. So just interesting to kind of think about. Yes, isn't that hilarious? Zuckerberg donating $1 million. Julianne, you are exactly right. Not only is Zuck pushing over the bucks, but you have, I believe, Jeff Bezos. Has he committed $1 million? I know someone else also threw in $1 million, one of the other tech giants. They are all making their way to Mar-a-Lago, and they are more than happy to write a check. They're all starting to act appropriately. They're worried about losing their FCC licensing. They know that they have all been violating the law as far as equal time provisions and other things they're supposed to do, because they, even though they're independent, so allegedly private companies, they are using the public airways, and there are rules surrounding using what amounts to public assets. And Julian says, make no sense. I'll close with, well, you got to remember, Julianne, that generally speaking, Republicans do not always do that well as far as the popular vote is concerned. It's just that the Democrats have always had a very fierce and a very good ground game. And fortunately for us, they did not recognize the benefits of the internet and getting on these podcasts for free. They were still doing the 1980s version of the ground game of knocking on doors and whatever they do. They definitely did not utilize modern technology the way that Donald Trump and the Trump campaign was using technology. So, but yes, and on one hand, it's scary how close it is. It definitely doesn't make sense, but it does make sense at the same time. Again, I have to chalk it up to all of the negative coverage. I mean, think about this. Think about this, Julianne. You had a guy that won president of the United States by 2.5 million votes, which is unusual, if not unheard of, for a Republican candidate for president. And for the last, 4 years, every piece of coverage of Donald Trump has been negative. We've been told that the end of our democracy was at hand. You even had a justice on the U.S. Supreme Court when they issued the ruling saying that a president cannot be prosecuted for his official acts. She said, fearing for democracy, I dissent. And of course, that was Justice Sotomayor. It was just a never-ending drumbeat. It's what's really amazing in my mind is that Donald Trump pulled this off. he was able to pull this off, and he's making these people pay for their misdeeds. He's making each and every one of them pay. You had ABC just choked over $15 million the other day. He's also turned around now, and instead of threatening it, he's actually done it. He's going after the Des Moines Register. Remember that gold standard so-called pollster that is her credentials were unimpeachable is what we were told, ladies and gentlemen. And she was showing that Kamala Harris was up something like 10 points or something crazy, and that Donald Trump and the Republicans were just in denial about this gold standard type of pollster. Clearly election interference, clearly more effort of trying to scare people to vote for Kamala Harris. So, yeah, on one hand, Julianne, it does not make sense. I would argue it doesn't make sense that he won, considering what he was up against. This is a man that had at least 2 people try to kill him before Election Day. One guy actually shot him with a large caliber rifle and took off his ear, and the man survived. If that doesn't show the providential care of God, I don't know what does. No one can convince me otherwise. It's just my opinion, but I firmly stand on it. Just that simple. Thank you for that comment, Julianne. And yes, you got the Dodge being implemented right now. I think that's fantastic. It's about time. And I'll say one other thing too about that. It is clear to me anyways, that you have a lot of the Democrats, at least some Democrats now, that are kind of softening up. They're like, I don't know if I want to keep blindly following all of these woke, nutty Democrats. I don't want to keep just following them off a ledge. I think I want to stand up, and I want to go back to the Democratic Party that my grandfather loved, the so-called JFK Democrats, even the Bill Clinton Democrats. The Bill Clinton of today is definitely not the Bill Clinton of 1994. That I can assure you. That Bill Clinton I understood. That Bill Clinton was a man of the working people. That Bill Clinton, as he would say, could feel your pain. I know that was a terrible impression. I'm sorry. But it's just amazing how everybody on the Democrat, these woke Democrat side, you have a lot of them that are really reevaluating the train wreck that they are on. Sapphire, she lost all 7 battleground states, Electoral College, and the popular vote. And yesterday she said she was not defeated. Well, she can say whatever she wants to say. It's very typical. It's kind of like the same old game plan for the, let's just say, the woke Democratic Party. And I would say this falls under, don't believe your lying eyes. Just because you see it doesn't mean it is real. And Julianne, the size of the rallies alone. Well, you know what? That would be an indication that Donald Trump was going to win. But I will tell you, my memory is very clear back in 2020. I remember people saying, hey, the polls are showing that President Biden's going to win. But I really am concerned that might not happen when you look at the size of Donald Trump's rallies. And I remember that reporter making that comment. I don't know if it was a video report I watched or if it was an article I was reading, but they were making points like that. But so in my mind, the size of the rallies alone did not lead me to believe that something special was about to happen with the Trump victory. But I tell you what did bring me a lot of solace. And it was surprising to me that people didn't pick up on this as much as I did. The polls were clearly wrong by 3 to 4% in 2016. Even though Donald Trump lost, or supposedly lost in 2020, the polls were wrong then. Remember, Joe Biden was supposed to win anywhere from 8 to 10% over Donald Trump. And that definitely did not happen. So we're 3 times around now. And the polls are all saying, well, most of them are saying that Donald Trump was going to lose, that it was either a dead tie or that he was going to lose by a percentage point. And at that point, I knew that was a lie. And we talked about it on this program. Y'all remember that. We've talked about it ad nauseum as to why that could be happening in the polls. Clearly, there's something about the polls that is not right. They have an error in their polling, and they need to fix it. more states are expected. Yes, I hope so, and I think so. I think a lot of people are going to see the prosperity and the good things that Donald Trump already has rolling, and he's not even the president of the United States. They're going to wake up to all the lies the Democrats have been telling us, including but not limited to the fact that Joe Biden has been in some type of serious cognitive decline for some time now. And again, don't believe your lying eyes. Something is seriously wrong. On this program, one of the things I've been really happy about and proud of, I think it was December, January last year, I've been screaming from the tallest mountain, something is wrong with Joe Biden. He's got some type of condition, some type of issue. Something is wrong. And of course, they kept denying it and denying it and denying it. And Julianne, I agree with you 100%. I wholeheartedly agree that President Donald Trump has the anointing of our Lord, not a doubt in my mind. Even the Bible has a passage that says something to the effect of that God brings leaders up at different times, but God also brings leaders up for a time such as this. And I truly feel that with Donald Trump. That I do believe also. Sapphire, yep. Representative Jeff Van Drew from New Jersey said that New Jersey will go red. I think that's a good possibility. New Jersey has always been like that. Remember, Chris Christie was the governor there for quite some time. And what other state was it over there? There's 2 or 3 other states that they're generally blue, but in the past they have been more contentious, more in play for the Republicans. We'll see how that goes. Matter of fact, just look at all the people that showed up at Madison Square Garden for President Donald Trump. And one of the biggest things I was really glad to see is Donald Trump. He achieved, 45% of the overall vote of the Latino Americans, and I believe it's 55% of Latino men. I think that statistic is phenomenal because the reason we have open borders right now is it's a power play. It's just that simple. We don't have to think long and hard about why Biden continues to allow the border to be open, why he's selling the actual construction materials we need to seal the border. They want more people to come in. They want immigration to be unfettered. They think, this is just what they think. They think that the illegals, the Latinos, whatever you want to call them, they're going to vote Democratic. That's what they think. They think in the future, it is an absolute lock for the Democrats in the future, but they're wrong. I know this now. This election has proved this because the Latino people as a whole are generally very conservative people. They are family-oriented people. They are Christian people. They love their families. They value family. They value tradition. These people are conservative. A lot of them might be poor that's coming over to the country. They're not going to stay that way for long. They're going to get out and work and bust their backside to do what we all do to achieve the American dream. And that is get up, work, do what we have to do to be successful. It's the American dream, ladies and gentlemen. And they know that dream is here. And if they can get here, they're going to come here, but it's not going to work out the way the Biden-Harris, these woke Democrats think it's going to work out. They think it's a lock on power, and that's not the way it is. And I hate these identity politics. I hate it with a passion. I hate talking about who's black, who's Latina, who's whatever. It's irritating. I don't know why we do that. Well, I do know why we do that. We do it because there's a lot of people that make a lot of money by telling us that America is racist, that we're all a bunch of racists, and that we hate black people and we this and we that. They make a lot of money to keep selling that BS, and that's exactly what it is. So I hate these identity politics, but unfortunately we have to talk about it from time to time. The truth is we are all brothers and sisters in Christ. We all come from Adam and Eve. We were all created by God, and we are all one race, and that is the human race. And until we are able to effectively by demanding that people stop dividing us by what we look like and putting us in boxes, we're going to have to live through this crap for a while. But that's just the way it is. It's ridiculous, and I wish it would stop. So, yes, the polls are a joke. You're exactly right, Julianne. Even MSM News people are sick of the, yeah, I think that even the corporations that own these news assets are having second thoughts. They're like, wow, this is really going to cost us on a profit level. Our job as a company is to turn a profit. We're a fiduciary for stockholders. Our job is to turn a profit, period. And you have companies like Disney and these other companies with this "don't say gay" nonsense. And by the way, that's not what the law said. That's what they called it. And now what are they doing? You have companies like ABC saying, oops, we made a mistake. We came up against Governor DeSantis. We lost our way as a company. Now they're looking to maybe selling off some of the ABC news assets. You definitely have NBC packaging MSNBC, and they want to get rid of that and some of the other news assets. They want to get back to what they do best, which, like for Disney, for example, is make good family-oriented movie, not getting involved with politics and allowing their employees to drive the mission of the company. And I think this is a good thing. You see the culture changing in our country. It's going from this nutty woke, and it's going back to common sense. And all I can say is amen to that. Julianne, I think they want to bankrupt these cities, bankrupt the country with it. I think that's a possible goal that they have, but I think it's more simple than that. I think it's just all about money and power for the Democrats, not even so much bankrupt. I think it is what we just talked about. It's all about power. They figure that even if they cannot come up with a deal, remember back in the 1980s, I remember this like it was yesterday. Ronald Reagan started drinking that Kool-Aid. And I love Ronald Reagan, right? We all love Ronald Reagan. But he took a sip of that Kool-Aid the Democrats sold him. What did they sell them? They said, Mr. President, if you will go ahead and allow all the illegals that are here and you'll put them on a path to citizenships, we promise you, sir, we will seal the border and maintain the border. And we see how that worked out, right? So all the people that were there, I think it was like 40 million people, something like that. All them people were put on a pathway to citizenship, right? Great. Okay. Well, since then, we don't know how many illegal people are here. There is a lot of illegals. Our immigration laws have been broken by choice, and now we got to fix it. We got to stop it. And listen, there's no way to deport all the people that's here. So let me just be really clear about that. Hopefully they'll concentrate on getting the bad actors, the gangs, the people that are undesirables, that we don't want them here. Those are the people hopefully they get rid of. But they're going to have to do something about this immigration crisis at some point. But the whole game is either they'll be able to broker a deal somewhere, somehow down the line, or not. The Democrats really don't care. They're in it for the long game. And what is the long game? The long game is this. Mr. and Mrs. Illegal come over here and they have a family. Their children are American citizens. Boom, that's it. In 18 years, they grow up and they vote. The Democrats think they're going to vote Democratic. And I just don't think that that is a given. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. So thank you for them comments. That's an engaging commentary, and I definitely appreciate that. Now, let's go ahead and switch over to our next story, because I want to make sure I hit all of these highlights right here. We're going to drill down a little more on Liz Cheney, but I have to take a moment to discuss. I'm sure y'all probably have heard by now, you have this nutty Judge Merchan out of New York. Remember, he repackaged these dead misdemeanors, I should say Alvin Bragg, and I would say in collaboration with Judge Merchant, because Judge Merchant ended up getting all these cases. Remember, for normal people, normal cases, it's a lottery system. And when your case comes up, it's just randomly given out to a particular judge. It's amazing how all these cases involving Donald Trump or people that have anything to do with Donald Trump all magically were chosen by lottery to go to Judge Merchant. I wonder what's going on. I wonder if there could be some kind of fraud or some type of plan or conspiracy going. Well, of course there is. I used to study statistics back when I was in college a long time ago. And I can assure you that when you take all the judges that are in this lottery, and then you take the number of defendants that are related directly or indirectly to Donald Trump, and you figure out the statistics that they would all go to Judge Merchant, it's not very, very likely at all. That I can tell you, but I'm sure you already know that it's the fix is in, right? The fix is in on this entire escapade. Let's take a look and see what our president-elect Donald Trump had to say about this crazy court ruling. I should say it's a court decision that came down from Judge Merchan today. Donald Trump was asking, just a little context here, Judge, we'd like you to do the right thing. I'm the president-elect. I'd like you to go ahead, step in, and throw this case out. This case was effectively a case to get Trump. I've won. It failed. Now it's time to put it back the way it should be. And additionally, we're going to talk about this in a second. This is a constitutional crisis if they continue to go down this road and try to push this case. What they want to do, Alvin Bragg wants this judge to effectively hit the pause button, to just hit the hold button, and just let this be decided 4 or 5 years down the road. Well, first of all, that would be a constitutional crisis. I'm going to tell you why in a second. Additionally, that's illegal. There's a law in the state of New York that once a defendant has been convicted, a sentence has to be passed within 1 year. Now, why would the judge not want to go ahead and, well, first of all, he hasn't followed the law the whole time this case has been going on. That's number one. Number two, why doesn't he go ahead and actually pass the sentence? Well, it's real simple. He's trying to find a way to keep President-elect Donald Trump from being able to appeal his decision. Remember, we've talked about that many times on this channel. Generally speaking, in order to appeal, and it varies state to state as far as the circumstance that allows you to do this, you have to wait to the conclusion of a trial of a case before you can appeal. Now, there are a few exceptions. We've talked about that, like with Fannie Willis, what we call or refer to as an interlocutory appeal, but that is generally very limited. As a matter of fact, remember, in front of Scott McAfee there in Georgia, Fulton County, Georgia, they had the Trump defendant Trump, and the other defense had to ask, specifically Asher Merchant, had to ask for permission to appeal it interlocutory to the Georgia Court of Appeals, and Scott McAfee allowed that to happen. Now, here in New York, and again, we're going to read his comment here in a second, in New York, the game is to try to have basically a guillotine over President Donald Trump, and that prima facie is unconstitutional. Let me read his response, and then I'll tell you why it's unconstitutional and what I think the president could do to fix this problem. So Donald Trump says, breaking in a completely illegal, psychotic order, the deeply conflicted, corrupt, biased, and incompetent acting Justice Juan Merchant has completely disrespected the United States Supreme Court and its historic decision on immunity. But even without immunity, this illegitimate case is nothing but a rigged hoax. Merchant, who is a radical partisan, wrote an opinion that is knowingly unlawful, goes against our Constitution, and, if allowed to stand, would be the end of the presidency as we know it. Merchant has so little respect for the Constitution that he is willing to keep in place an illegal gag order on me, your president and president-elect, just so I cannot expose his and his family's disqualifying and illegal conflicts. Unbelievably, technically, there is still a standing gag order on the president-elect of the United States of not being able to say what he wants to say in relation to this case. It's kind of unbelievable. Now, listen, I like to call it like I see it. And, you know, when I think there's a little bit of whatever going on, I like to tell you the president's exaggerating just the eensy bit. There is a gag order on him, but he can say what he wants to say, even though there is a gag order on him. And the reason for that is there's no way in the world, as President Donald Trump elect, he would ever have to stand before a Judge Merchant, period. Guarantee it. At this point, in my opinion, Judge Merchant has no jurisdiction on him because Donald Trump is a quasi-federal a federal person as of right now. He is the embodiment of the executive branch. And remember, in our country, and here's the answer to the constitutional crisis, in our country, we have three separate and distinct co-equal branches of government. You have the legislature, executive, judiciary. You cannot have one over the other per se. And the way this case is winding up, if you will, is you would have what I just referred to as a constitutional crisis. You would have a judge that would have power over a sitting president of the United States. This could weaken him. This could cause all kinds of problems for our republic as a whole. It's just unconscionable about that. And I have a video, but in the interest of time, I got a couple points I just want to mention about this, because it is really shocking that a president could be facing this type of problem, even as president of the United States. I actually have the order that Judge Merchant made today. It's 41 pages, but we are not going to have time to read that as of right now. But I did want to emphasize the potential problems that it could bring as far as a constitutional issue. And it basically boils down to three. You could have what's called the separation of powers. We kind of just discussed that. You could have something that is violating what I call a constitutional precedent. And basically, there's a case called Clinton versus Jones for 1997. It was determined that a sitting president can face civil litigation, but the court was very clear at that time that said that when it comes to a criminal matter, that's a whole different animal, and it would warrant serious, severe scrutiny. And they refused to answer that question at that time. So the point is that can be in conflict, not just with separation of powers, but with the actual precedent, what we call constitutional precedent. Basically, it's against the law. I listed here executive function. A criminal trial, especially involving felony counts, could significantly disrupt a president's ability to execute their responsibilities as commander-in-chief of the United States of America. So it sounds like a bunch of mumble jumble words at times, but this is very serious. You cannot have a situation where you could have a judge and he's a state judge at that. He's not even a federal judge. Can you imagine that? A federal or a state judge having some type of power over a sitting federal president? I've never even heard of it. I've never really even thought about it in that type of context, but that's effectively what you have. And you had Judge Merchant, by the way. He kind of weaved this novel theory. Again, he's going back to these novel theories here. He's basically trying to say that the conduct that Donald Trump allegedly exhibited in this so-called hush money case was personal conduct, and that it would not have affected the trial or the outcome of the trial if they would not have called people like Hope Hicks and these other people. And of course, that's a bunch of nonsense. You know, the old adage is you have junk in, you get junk out. I hope that's clear enough. Y'all kind of get where I'm going with that on there. So any questions on that before I move on to our final tip here that I want to drill down on? Let me just double check. Let's see. Julianne says, I live 8 miles from San Diego, Tijuana border. I saw the difference the next day after Clinton resigned or signed the NAFTA. No more illegals. What? Yeah, I believe that. All righty. And then Trump made it clear what would happen if they try this when he takes office. His team said what they would do. And, you know, there's something else interesting, too. Donald Trump reminds me so much of Ronald Reagan. I don't know if a lot of you old enough to remember this, but I remember as a kid the Iran hostage situation. And I remember then President Jimmy Carter. He's the first president I can remember, but you had President Jimmy Carter. I was living in Chicago at the time. Jimmy Carter's reputation was as a peanut farmer. And of course, he was a pacifist. He's a good man, but he's a pacifist, and no one feared him. And that's very unfortunate. And when we had this Iran hostage crisis, It was amazing that when President Reagan was sworn into office, I remember as clear as day, you had a split screen, ladies and gentlemen. You had two separate sides of the screen. I remember on one side of the screen, President Reagan was being sworn in to office. On the other side of the screen, you had one of these large planes, and you had all of our hostages walking up the stairs, being loaded on that plane to be flown home. And history is about to repeat itself. You had Donald Trump in a True Social post not long ago say that if all of the hostages are not free by the time he is sworn in, he made it very clear that there would be, in his words, hell to pay for the terrorists in Gaza. That's what he said. He did not give specifics, which he should not give specifics, but he made it very clear what his expectations are. He made it very clear that there would be very serious consequences if they were not released. And that's what a leader does. That's what a true leader does, ladies and gentlemen, is they basically can achieve peace through strength. And it's really an art that you have to know how and when to will. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's the nature of the beast. Let me share with you here. We talked yesterday about this poor soul that is being persecuted, in my estimation. And of course, her name is Breonna Boston. Her husband, by the way, who we're going to talk about today, his name is Daniel Boston. Now, remember, this is the 42-year-old mother. I think she's got 2 or 3 kids, no criminal record. She was on the phone talking to her insurance company, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Florida. They apparently have some disagreement with something, if something should be covered or not covered. And she had the gall to tell them, deny, defend, delay. And then she said, you people are next. And because of that, the FBI took that recorded phone call, turned it over to the local sheriff in Lakeland, and they arrested her. They arrested her on some very serious charges that carry a minimum of 15 years in jail. Additionally, they don't have a ton of money laying around. So the judge in this case gave her a bond of $100,000. You know that I am so passionate about free speech and how important it is that we maintain and keep our free speech rights here in our country. This is an example of another overreaction by a judge. This, in my opinion, no way should ever be prosecuted. This is not what we call a traditional terroristic threat. As a matter of fact, when I first heard the deny, depose, you people next, I actually thought for the first time of the book by a similar name, and that effectively she was saying, I know how you people operate. And get ready. I'm going to call John Morgan. It's one call, that's all. And we're going to war. We're going to go to court. It's perfectly legal. You can make threats like that. Threats themselves are not illegal. It's certain threats that could potentially be illegal. And as we talked about yesterday, generally for there to be a successful prosecution under the statute, you generally have to have an act in furtherance. It can't just be words. Look at President Donald Trump on January 6th. Forget that he said peacefully and patriotically. You can't, he was never charged with incitement. And there's a reason for that. He never incited anybody. There's a 1969 Supreme Court law that says exactly what I'm saying. There has to be an act in furtherance. For example, if you say that you're going to blow something up, well, then you're going to need to maybe buy dynamite after that, or give someone the cash to go buy it. That would be enough to cook your goose, so to speak. In this particular case, when she was interviewed, it was very clear that she had no intent of doing anyone harm. She told the investigating officer that. She shouldn't have talked to the officer, but notwithstanding that, she was very clear, I don't even own a firearm. Yet, like I said, they arrested her. Well, here's some good news for you right here. This is her current page of GoFundMe. They have started 2 different pages for her. I'm not going to get involved with that, but as of right now, they've raised $58,715. So I'm so happy people are waking up to how outrageous this particular situation is. It says this fund is to support the bond payment, continued legal fees and other expenses being incurred in the defense of or due to Breonna Boston's felony charge. This is being set up by her family, and this is the official GoFundMe for this situation. Any funds contributed will go towards expenses related to her incarceration starting on 12/10/24. So she's been in prison for the last week, 7 or 8 days. Obviously, a very serious charge that she's facing. My opinion is that this is a improper charge, to say the least. I hope that when she finally is out of jail, and let me share this with you. I hope when she is finally out of jail and she is one who turns around and hammers these people, hammers them. She should hammer everybody that had anything to do with this particular case on the following grounds. First Amendment, the violation of her civil rights, specifically the First Amendment right to have freedom of speech. You have protection under the First Amendment for speech that's inflammatory or what we call hyperbolic. And that is clearly what this is. I hope she sues everybody involved with this, specifically the Lakeland Police Department and the FBI for false arrest. I don't have to explain false arrest. We all know what that's about. And then generally, there is this very powerful civil right. And I want to make sure we all understand this particular civil right because it's very key. This is what we call a 1983 action. It's, well, you know what? It kind of relates to what I'm talking about with Judge Merchant. I hope this is what President Donald Trump and his attorneys do, is they use this 1983 action. And they kind of, in the president's case, they need to turn it into effectively what's called a mandamus. We've talked about a mandamus on this channel. What they need to do is they need to appeal it to a higher court under what's called a mandamus. And think of a mandamus this way. It's telling somebody such as Judge Merchant, who has a legal obligation to do something, to do it. In other words, Judge Merchant needs to pass a sentence on President-elect Donald Trump so that he can appeal. So they need to go upstairs to the Court of Appeals and to the U.S. Supreme Court if necessary under a mandamus action, which is kind of quasi-related to this 1983 action. And in relation to Breonna Boston, case, kind of similar. It's clearly her civil rights have been broken. So under what we call 42 USC 1983, aka the 1983 action, I hope she sues that, you know what, out of them. When, as an attorney, when you talk to a government, even though they have a lot of so-called immunity or what they call sovereign immunity, this type of stuff, when you start talking of a USC 1983 action, it generally makes the hairs on the back of their neck stand up. I'm sure this woman would rather just be free at this point, but I hope and I pray that she gets the justice that that she so rightly deserves. Okay? Any final questions on that? I don't want to cut it too short, but I don't want it to go too long. I have a few things I have to get to tonight. But folks, these are very serious matters. We need to make sure we pay attention to what's going on in our world so that we can be aware of it. We can make sure we don't fall into some of the traps other people have. And we have to stop indoctrination. We want to make sure we're not lied to and we're not told a bunch of nonsense. And then we go around believing that type of nonsense. And one thing's for sure, I can promise you on my channel, I have no intention of allowing that to happen. Until we meet next time, my friends, I hope that the Holy Spirit blesses each and every one of you, and you walk around with the special anointing of our Lord until we meet again. I always like to say, keep your mind free, never give up. Until next time, my friends, I am J.R. Dukes.